We jumped into this series a couple weeks ago called Real Life, Real Struggles. If you're a guest this morning with us, I'm super glad that you're here to have this conversation. As a church, our vision is to connect people to Jesus and love our community. And part of us connecting with Jesus as a whole is us having some of these difficult conversations. Addressing topics that oftentimes are difficult and hard to wrestle through. We don't have lots of answers. We're not sure what things look like. And so we're having these real life conversations about struggles that are obstacles of us getting closer to God. We're having these conversations like parenting a couple weeks ago. If you have kids right now running around your house, it is a struggle at times, okay? It's crazy at times. If you have grown kids, sometimes the things that they're doing or not doing are disappointing or exciting, and we're not sure what to do with those. It can be a struggle. Last week we had a conversation about suffering. And we asked this question, why is there so much suffering? Why do bad things happen to good people? And there's several different reasons that we, came up with, but we landed on this idea together that our suffering is a stage for God to reveal himself. It's not easy, it's not fun, but our suffering and our hurt is an opportunity for God to show up and show off. And today we're going to take another step into this real dialogue of real struggles. We've mentioned it through service already, this idea of mental health. This not just idea, but this struggle for so many is very real. It's gripping. It's somewhat unknown. And it has its grasp on so many of us. This morning, before we jump into this topic, I want to spend a few minutes praying for us, and then we'll move forward. Father in heaven, God, I'm grateful for your church. God, I'm grateful that we can be here and we can learn and laugh. We can be honest with one another. God, I pray this morning that we're not playing pretend. God, I know that there are some of us in the room that we are hurting, and we are hurting deep, and we're not sure what to do. There are some of us right now that, God, it was a project just to get here this morning. Father, there are some of us that we are wrestling with some of the darkest areas of our life. And so, God, I pray this morning that you bring healing. I pray this morning, Father, that we will be bold enough to admit our struggles. God, I pray this morning that your Spirit will sweep through this room. God, that you will pour into us. Jesus, we are so thankful this morning that because of a cross, God, we can sit here with hope. Jesus, we can sit here with the hope of heaven no matter what our hurt looks like. We love you, and it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Where was I in life when I found out I had mental illness?
When I first got diagnosed, it was kind of, depression wasn't really quite out there. It was something that you hid.
Couldn't get out of bed one day. I couldn't go to work. And I found myself having ruminating thoughts.
I was going into 7th grade, and some things just started to feel off.
From the time that I was really young, I knew that I ate differently than everybody else, but I never really thought that I had an eating disorder. I just thought that I knew how to eat in a healthy way.
As I'm listening to all this hurt that this guy is telling me, I'm like flashing back from a deployment. I remember walking into my house and then immediately taking a turn into the garage. And we had this old bottle of rum that someone gave me a gift. And I would go in there and I would take this shot of rum, just one shot. And then I would walk into the house and I would say hi to everybody.
And I remember I'm a nurse, and I'm looking at the symptoms of depression and anxiety, and I'm reading every single one of them, and I have every single one of them. But I say, this can't be real, this can't be happening, because I didn't have anything major happen. I didn't have a major grief or a loss or something that precipitated this brokenness.
I kind of thought that it wasn't that big of a deal, and that I was fine. I thought girls with eating disorders had to be super thin, or just that I had this picture in my mind, and that wasn't me. So I really had a hard time thinking that maybe I was struggling.
And I remember one evening driving home, and it was in the middle of going through all the nasty divorce stuff, and I was ready to end it. I was just done. I was ready to check out.
I was using other things to take out the pain and everything that I was just feeling inside. And so there was definitely a point in that year that I felt so alone and so hopeless.
I would want to take the emotion that I was feeling and do something with it. Like, let someone feel it. Like, I'd want to drag people into it in a bad way. I'd want them to feel my pain. I'd want to just take my car and I'd be driving down the freeway and just swerve just to go head on into someone else's car.
That time when I was realizing how depressed I was, I remember laying on the floor and I was shaking, and I remember looking at my Bible, and it didn't comfort me like it used to. It used to, I'd be able to get in and out of seasons where it would be my hope, and it would encourage me. And those days, it didn't. It was dark.
I was just so down, I couldn't see any light.
I wouldn't take that help. I was in a really big pity party and actually a pit of depression.
But then I'm feeling, why are you feeling this way? You're not one of those people that want to commit suicide. You're not one of those addicts, and you're not one of those guys that is weak. Why are you feeling like this? So it's this confusing. It's like this dual existence.
Mental illness has had a huge impact just because I think that before I wasn't really sure. I was not aware of what really mental illness even was.
I have to hope that my brokenness is part of a story of redemption, of reconciliation, restoration.
It really helped me to learn to trust other people and to rely on them for that I couldn't do it all myself, that I needed other people to help take care of me too. So that was really hard, but it was also, I think, what I needed to be able to move forward.
Open up, just let it go. You just have to unleash everything, because otherwise you hold it in your heart and it just poisons you over and over and over.
I'm beginning to be more comfortable that that's how I'm gonna have to be the rest of my life. I'm gonna be a wounded healer. I'm gonna be someone that walks with a limp. And that limp requires me to stick close to Jesus, stick close to others. And so in the end, I wouldn't trade it.
Get medication, get therapy. It's critical.
There's no shame in struggling, but just don't struggle alone. Reach out to other people, get help, talk to people, go to recovery groups, go to support groups. You're not alone in this, and it's not your fault.
I know the next person could have hope if they just give it to him, even if it's a little, even if it doesn't feel like it's not working. But that little bit that I give and that anyone can give every single day will make a difference.
I was talking to Emily last night, and there are some topics that I prepare all week, and I get up here, and I'm just like, all right, here it is. And then there's a few topics every once in a while that, if I'm going to be really honest and really transparent, that I just ache all week for us. I feel the weight of today's subject. And it's one of those things that all week I've kind of processed through of, well, there's this question that I know a lot of us wrestle with, but then that leads to this question, and there's kind of questions upon questions upon questions that, to try to answer all of them seems nearly impossible. But yet, for each of us, our question matters, because it's the biggest wrestling match that we're in together. It's the biggest wrestling match that we feel like deep in our insides that we can't control. Whether it's anxiety or depression, whether it's PTSD or bipolar, and even suicide. The struggles are real, and for far too long as a church, and not just here, but church as a whole, we've not really known what to say when it comes to these topics, and so we've said nothing. And that has done a great disservice to some of our deepest and darkest moments. And really, that's what they are. And no one really expects when it comes to us that our mind will seemingly turn on us, right? And no one expects that our mind inside of us will all of a sudden be our greatest enemy, or at least feel like it. And leave us feeling alone, and leaving us feeling in fear, and leaving us feeling exhausted or feeling enraged, and as though we have no value. No one expects for our minds to shift and turn on that. And I've mentioned throughout this series that for some of us, each week is going to be a different struggle. Like for some of us right now, we're like, man, I really don't understand this. And for some of us right now, we are anxious because we're talking about this right now. And this is the world that we live in every day. You see, the verse that keeps coming into my mind over and over again all the way throughout this series is, when one of us hurts, we all hurt. And so if one of us is struggling with parenting, we're all hurting. And if some of us are struggling with depression and PTSD, then we're all hurting, because that's what the church is. We're aching together. And I mean, I could stand up here this morning and read you different statistics about, anxiety, and that anxiety affects more than 19 million people. Or I could tell you that 2 out of 3 people with depression are not accurately treated. I could tell you that suicide is a leading cause of death between people 15 and 29 years old. I could tell you statistics upon statistics, but I don't think I need to. I think that whether it's in our community or in our families, I think we know the weight of the struggle, the real life struggle that many of us live in, or many people that we love live in, or many people in our community are living in. Mental health struggles are tormenting our culture. And due to the weight of stress and the weight of busyness and everything else, it just seems to be climbing and climbing. And so the question is, where do we turn? If you're in the middle of it, where do we turn? Where do we turn in the middle of this darkness when it seems like there is no answers? Where do we turn when it seems like everything is going wrong? Where do we turn when our mind tells us that everything is going wrong, even though it's not? But where do we go? What is going to be right? What is going to pull us out? And we seem to grasp at anything we can find. And what I have found in my own battle with this very topic is that community, and knowing that you are not alone in this struggle, can sometimes be the best thing. And I want to try to be as transparent as possible throughout our few minutes this morning. There are some times, and yeah, the preacher's going to say this, there are some times in the middle of this type of darkness that just hearing, well, hand it over to Jesus and he'll make it better, is not helpful. I mean, in the long run, it's true. And I wouldn't do what I do if I didn't believe that. But in the moment, it's not helpful, because you don't even know what's going on to hand it, right? You don't even know necessarily what you're worried about. You don't know why you feel jittery. You don't know why all of a sudden these images just keep popping up in your mind that you wish you could go back and redo, but they do. And so to say, hand it over to Jesus, I don't even know what's going on inside of me. And so to hand something over, I don't know how to do that. But this morning, what I want to encourage us is that we still approach Jesus. We might not know what to hand over, and we might not know what to say, but this morning I want to encourage us that we still need to approach. Mark chapter 5. If you've got a Bible, you can turn there. Mark chapter 5, it'll be on the screen. Jesus and his disciples, they're crossing this lake. Okay, we learn of no other reason that Jesus is crossing a lake in a boat with these guys other than what he is about to do. He's after one man. Okay, I want us to take note of that. Jesus is after one man, and he is crossing a lake in order to get to him. Mark chapter 5, there is a man that is tormenting a town. There is a man that is living with dead people in tombs. And there is a man that is living where it seems as though everything in his life is out of control. Mark chapter 5, beginning in verse 1. This is how it plays out. They went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came out of the tombs to meet him. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been chained hand and foot, but tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day, among the tombs and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell at his knees in front of him. "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? In God's name, don't torture me." For Jesus said to him, "Come out of this man, you impure spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. A large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs. Allow us to go into them." He gave them permission, and the impure spirits ran out, went into the pigs. The herd of about 2,000 in number rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and countryside, and the people went to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man, and they told about the pigs as well. Then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave the region. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. Jesus did not let him, but said, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." So the man went away and began to tell in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed. Jesus meets this man, his disciples. They're in this region called the Gerasenes, which was a region where Jewish people didn't go. Everything was unclean there. And so for Jesus to travel to this area with a boat of Jewish guys is almost unheard of. But Jesus recognizes, I need to go there. He goes there, and as he steps out of the boat, this guy who sees him from a distance away on the side of the rocks, which is where they buried people in the tombs, in the side of the hillside, all of a sudden Jesus hears this shriek. His disciples sitting in the boat next to him, the hair on the back of their neck stands up. What on earth is that? And as Jesus is standing, as he steps out of the boat, the disciples are still sitting there looking to see what this shriek is. And all of a sudden, this man with broken chains on his hands and his feet comes barreling down this hillside screaming at him. If you're a disciple in this moment, you think, Jesus, what have you brought us to? You know, like this is haunted house times like 10. This guy's barreling at Jesus, screaming and crying out. He has wounds all over his arms and his legs from where he has cut himself, where self-harm has gotten the best of him. He's running towards Jesus. And he falls before him. And the demons begin to plea with Jesus, because even they recognize his power. Even they recognize what Jesus is capable of. Although maybe not literal demons like is happening here, we can understand this man's torment, can't we? If we are in a wrestling match with one of these mental struggles, whether anxiety or depression, we can understand this man's torment. We can understand the way that he is feeling. Maybe for you, it's when you lay awake at night, thinking of everything bad that could happen. Your heart is racing, you're jittery, and you then begin to think about death and dying, and the only thing you want to do is fall asleep, but it's the furthest thing from possible. Maybe you understand this man's torment when you can't get yourself out of bed, when you're not motivated to do anything. You get lost in TV because it seems to be the best medicine. You enjoy the dark with the covers pulled up, because it's where you feel like you can do nothing else. Maybe you understand this man's torment as your child asks you a question and immediately flashbacks from your time at war begin to pop into your mind. Moments you wish you could relive or you could forget about, but immediately it leaves you feeling disappointed or enraged. Maybe it's the overwhelming feeling of hospital bills in college, credit card bills, your house, and the latest news that you've received is that you lost your job. And you don't know where to turn, and you don't know where anything is going to come from, and you don't know how you're going to get things taken care of, and you find yourself sitting there thinking about just leaving and ending everything. We understand this man's torment. And the conversation that Jesus has with this man, so brief, but we can't miss it. The demons, they begin to plea with Jesus. Listen, don't get rid of us. Don't torture us. And out of everything that Jesus could have said to these guys, what does he do? He asks for their name. Listen, if I'm face to face with a demon, you know what I'm not asking? Hey, what's your name? Email address? How can I contact you later, right? Like, I don't want to see you ever again. Jesus looks at these demons and he says, identify yourself. Who are you? What is your name? In other words, admit yourself. And these demons, they look back at Jesus and they say, we are legion, for we are many. Legion was another name for a bunch of Roman soldiers. It says, we are legion. And it gives them his name. And when Jesus knows who they are, then Jesus pulls them out and he throws them to the pigs and they run off a cliff. People are shocked. They run into town. They tell everybody what's going on. I mean, there had to have been a couple people that own these pigs that are now broke as a joke, all right? All of their livestock just ran off the cliff, right? Like that's real life. Okay, it all just died. They're freaking out. They run into town. Well, they're running into town to tell everybody about what's going on. The man who lived in torment cleans himself up. But when did it happen? There was two places this man needed to be. In front of Jesus and admitting what was going on. Friends, when it comes to our struggles, when it comes to our depression, when it comes to our anxiety, when it comes to thoughts of suicide, the best place that you can be is in front of Jesus and admitting what's going on. Because I guarantee you that you are not alone in your battle. There is someone else that's battling the same battle that you are. I preached a sermon on this type of topic a couple years ago. And it was kind of when I was in the middle of maybe the deepest part of this battle in my own life and just kind of opened up and shared about that. And I've never had more people come up to me after sermon than when I preached that week. Because we're not alone in this. In what feels like the most lonely battle, you are not alone. Friends, our truth for this morning is this: hope comes when we admit our hurt. Hope comes when we admit our hurt, when we admit what's going on inside us, when we give it a name. Hope comes when we admit our hurt, because you're not meant to carry it alone, and I'm not meant to carry it alone either. One of my best friends, Tim Mitchell, when I was really battling, feeling anxious and feeling depressed, and after losing someone that I loved so much, I would sit and I would eat lunch with Tim, and Tim, he would just straight up ask me, in Leroy's words from earlier, he'd get in my face. And he would just ask me, Matt, how are you doing with this anxiety stuff? And I would be honest back and I would say, Tim, it's been a good week, or it's been a terrible week. I couldn't sleep last night because I was worrying about all of these things with my family that aren't even true. And you know what Tim never did? Tim, who was a preacher over in Buckland, he never said, well, Matt, I mean, in this Bible verse right here, this could fix it all. He never imparted great wisdom on me and said, well, Matt, I mean, from my knowledge and training. He never did that. All Tim did was sit there as we ate a burger together or ate barbecue together and listen. And every time he would look at me, he's like, I don't understand everything you're going through, but I want you to understand that I'm here going through it with you every time. And as I admitted and gave a name to my struggle, day in and day out, and kind of offloaded it, Tim picked it up and carried it. Because that's what the church is supposed to do. Hope is found when we admit our hurt. And as a church, we should not just talk about this together, but we struggle through it together. There is probably someone in your row right now in the middle of this battle. And if it's not you, it's someone else. And if you're the someone else this morning, here's what I want you to know. It is okay for you not to be okay. It is all right. It is okay this morning for you to be in a struggle with depression. This morning, it is okay for you to be in a battle with anxiety. This morning, it is okay for you to be wrestling with PTSD or bipolar. It is okay. It is just not okay for you to stay there. It's not okay for you to identify yourself with the diagnosis. That's not okay because God created you for so much more. God did not create you and design you to be a diagnosis. He created you and designed you to be a masterpiece. And sometimes in the middle of that, we feel like, I feel like God has forgotten me. I feel like I'm all by myself. Psalm 139 says, hey, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. And what I have learned is that we cannot be wonderfully made and woefully forgotten at the same time. The God who created us and loves us and designed us, He does not walk away from us when the world seems to be crashing down on top of us. Hope in the middle of your dark, hope in the middle of your hurt, hope in the middle of you not even knowing what you're feeling can be found when we admit our hurt. God's best design of you is not to be tormented and broken. It's to be healed and restored. Psalm 40, verse 1 through 3 reminds us of the power of God. He says, I waited patiently for the Lord. This is David writing. David who's committed adultery. David who in his life was chased down and hunted, trying to be killed by armies. David who abandoned people and murdered people. He says, I waited patiently for the Lord, which means it didn't happen right away. He turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit of the mud and mire. He set my feet on a rock. He gave me a firm place to stand. He put a new song in my mouth, a hymn of praise to our God. Many will see and fear the Lord and put their trust in Him. It didn't happen right away, but he was lifted up. He found himself in a posture of being before Jesus and admitting what was going on. Friends, this morning, God is not in the business of labeling messes. He's in the business of making masterpieces. And you and I are His greatest masterpiece ever, even if there is broken struggles in the middle of our life. When you feel alone, you're not. When you feel like no one else is around, there is someone that cares. When I look at this story of Jesus and this man, this was a man that the only way that the people knew how to respond to him was to get rid of him. And probably you felt like that before, right? Your spouse doesn't know what you're going through, and so they're just quiet and seem kind of distant. Your best friends, they don't know what to say, so they don't really say anything in the church. I mean, we don't have a ministry for this, so I don't know. And we feel as though we're just cast outside. And I pointed out at the beginning, there's no other reason that Jesus comes across this lake other than for this man. And friends, if he's willing to cross a lake for a man possessed by demons and who is tormented, there's nothing that he's not willing to cross for you and for me. And if a lake wasn't enough, then there was a cross. And it wasn't just crossing the lake and healing a man, it was carrying a cross and being beaten for you and for me and picking up our hurt that we admit and taking care of it. Peter writes in 1 Peter, he's writing to broken. He's not writing to perfect. He's not writing to figure it out. He's writing to broken. He's writing to a hurt church. Okay, he's writing to pieces that have kind of fallen apart. And he says this, he says, humble yourselves, therefore. Listen, there are some of us in the room, I believe there's nothing more we need to hear this morning than these words. Humble yourselves, therefore, where? Under the wisdom of the world? Under what we Google about our struggles? No, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift us up in due time. Cast all of your anxiety on him. Cast all of your anxiety on him. Cast all of your anxiety on him because he what? He cares for you. Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Resist him. Standing firm in the faith because you know the family of believers throughout the world is undergoing the same kind of suffering, and the God of all grace, who called you to his eternal glory in Christ, after you have suffered a little while, will himself restore you and make you strong, firm, and steadfast. To him be the power forever and ever. Amen. Friends, there is an enemy that is warring for our hearts, and he wants nothing more than to convince you that you have no value. There is an enemy called Satan that is described as a lion, and he is prowling around your life, and he is looking for the moment to say that you don't matter. He's looking for the moment to say that you don't have a place. He's looking for the moment in your life to tell you that you don't have purpose. Satan is crawling around and prowling around, looking for the moment in your life to say, listen, just stay in bed. Listen, worry about this a little bit more. Hey, this isn't going to work out, and here's why. He's prowling around your life saying you're not matching up to your siblings. He's prowling around your life and saying, listen, you don't have a place. You should leave this place. Satan wants nothing more to pull you away from the kingdom of God and get you to focus on the struggles of the world. We have an enemy, and we have to recognize that he is involved. And he is looking to devour and eat us for lunch. You know what I love about the last part of the story in Mark? All of these people, these people from the town, after they observed what had happened, they come back and they're like, Jesus, you got to get out of here. You killed our livestock. You've done all of these crazy things. And the man who had been tormented is sitting by the fire, and he's dressed, and he's shaved, and he brushed his hair. And as they walk up, he looks up, he says, hey guys, how's it going? And Jesus gets back into the boat with his disciples, and the man begs to go with Jesus. More than anything else, he wants to be close to Jesus. He doesn't understand everything that happened. He doesn't understand how the healing happened. He doesn't understand everything that has just unfolded. All he wants to do is be close to Jesus. And friends, in the middle of our darkness, the best place that we can be is before Jesus, admitting what's going on. And it doesn't mean that we've got answers, but it means that we are in the posture of healing. It means that we are in the best place to find answers. Hope can be found. Hope can be found when we admit our hurt. This morning, what's the name of your battle? This morning, if we were to admit our hurt, what does it look like? This morning, what is it we've been hiding from others? This morning, what is the doubts in our life that we've been holding on to? What is it? What is the dark? When I find myself feeling the most anxious, when I find myself in the middle of some of these battles, I have to remind myself of what I can see and tangibly understand around me that God has done. And sometimes it means going in and looking at my kids before I go to bed and reminding me what God has given me is good. I remember when I was growing up, I was at my home church camp. And growing up in the city, you don't see lots of stars. Okay, there's city lights, you don't see many. And so we would go to church camp, and all of a sudden, these stars would pop out of nowhere. And as a city kid, you didn't really know what was going on. But I remember one of my favorite things to do was when it was dark on a really clear night. And there was a big soccer rec field. It was to get a tarp and to put the tarp out and to lay on the tarp and just look up. I remember I was in high school. The guy that was there leading worship, his name was Ben Hayes. Ben was a good guy, and he loved Jesus. And our family group, it was the end of a night. We were talking about the end of the day, and our family group, we got a tarp, and we laid it out in the middle of this rec field. And we kind of all laid kind of head to head, and we just looked up. And I remember that night laying there and looking up. And from one tree line to the other tree line, as far as I could see, was stars upon stars upon stars. And some were twinkling, and it looked like some were moving. And from here to over there was nothing but this shower of stars all around us. And I remember thinking to myself, man, God, this is cool. This is cool. And just about the time that I thought, Ben, as we're all laying there, Ben looking up at the stars says, guys, listen, isn't it cool how God just created all of this? And we're all like, yeah. And then he goes, you know what I want more than anything else? He goes, I want to be a rock star for Jesus. And we all kind of laughed. And then he paused. And he said, and I don't know how it would work out, but what I believe is that if a God can do all of this around me, I can only imagine what he can do inside of me. That night as I sat there was stars everywhere. From front to back, everywhere I could see, there was just this blanket of stars. And the same God that put every one of those stars up in the sky and created all of this splendor around me is the same God that cares deeply and passionately about us. The same God that puts all of this around us cares deeply about what's inside of us. And when we doubt, and when we feel lonely, and when we feel anxious, and when we feel depressed, I have to remind myself, God did all of this, and so what can he do in me? He's not walked away, and he's not forgotten. And if I get myself in a posture before him, and admitting what's going on, and not keeping it a secret, then I'm in the best place to find hope. This morning, are you in that place? Or are you just worrying? This morning, are you in that place to find hope? Why don't we go ahead and stand together? This morning, as we worship and sing together, there are some of us that we are deep. As David said in Psalm 4, we are deep in the mud and the mire of this. We feel the weight of this. We're awake all night. We can't get out of bed in the morning. We have thought this week about leaving this earth. There's some of us, we have friends and family that have. We feel the weight of this. And maybe this morning as we worship, we need to be reminded that if Jesus is willing to cross a lake and hang on a cross, he is not walking away from us now. He is there. You matter to him. He created you. And you are wonderfully made. Just because there's a broken area in our life or a deep struggle in our life does not mean that you are not wonderful. This morning, the same God that sprinkles stars in the sky, that runs after our hearts, wants to meet us this morning and remind us it is okay for you not to be okay. Just don't stay that way. You were made for so much more. And this morning, maybe some of us, more than anything else, just need to hear God say, I love you. and you matter and you have a purpose in this world that I don't want you to miss. The struggles are real. The struggles are real around us. But so is the God who loves us. This morning, what do we need to do to get ourselves in a posture before Jesus? This morning, what is it that we need to admit is real that's going on to find hope moving forward? Let's worship together.